Okay, so quite often we're asked to rearrange a formula or to change the subject of a formula, and the method that you use for this is similar to the method you would use to solve an equation. The difference is that you would not end up with a value as you do in an equation. You would end up with a rearrangement of the different parts of the formula. So let's take a look at this. I've got a question here where s equals y plus x over r, and we want to make x the subject of that formula. So I've started off by saying take y from both sides, because ultimately what we want to do is remove all the barriers to having x on its own. So we start with this one, take it away, and we end up with s minus y is x over r. And then the final thing to do is to rid ourselves of this denominator by multiplying by r, and what we would have to do is treat this s minus y as a single piece of information, so put it into a bracket, and we end up with r bracket s minus y close bracket equals x. Now we can, if we want to, then just reverse that so that it looks as it should, because it asks us to make x the subject, which means it should come first. So x equals r bracket s minus y. Okay, have another one. Hopefully you can see that. Rearrange to make x the subject again. Now you'll notice that we've got a fraction, and that on that fraction both the numerator and the denominator contain two terms. So I've put brackets round them, although the question is not presented with brackets, but I think that it just reminds you that we should, for certain parts of this, treat the numerator and the denominator as single pieces of information. It just makes calculation easier. Okay, so the first thing I've done here to resolve this is to multiply by 2x plus 5, and I've done that because it's sitting on the bottom as a denominator, so I want to get rid of that. And what happens there is that it then ends up on the left hand side as a multiplier and disappears from the right hand side. So you can see immediately why the brackets are important. And what happens then is that we should expand the brackets. Oops, sorry, I'm a bit wobbly there. And that gives us z times 2x, 2xz, z times 5, 5z, and 3x minus 1 can come out of its brackets now because it's clear that there's nothing else going on that side. And then what I've done is to take 5z, because all I want on this side are terms containing x. Anything that doesn't contain x I want to push over onto the right hand side. So that's what I've written here, 2xz, 5z is gone and it's been taken away on this side. And then, because I've got this x term here, I want it over here, so I've taken 3x away from both sides, and I've ended up here with two terms which contain x and two terms which do not contain x. And that's sort of halfway along to where we want to be, because we're wanting to make x the subject, and so we want everything with x on this side and everything without x on that side. Now what I've done next is to factorise, and I've factorised the left hand side by taking x outside a bracket because it's common to both, which leaves me with 2z minus 3. And here, something that you don't see too often, but it's just tidier, is I've factorised by minus 1. So I've taken a minus 1 outside, which leaves me with 1 plus 5z. Now you don't have to do that, but it just mathematically looks tidier. And then the final thing I'm doing is I'm going to divide by the entire contents of this bracket here. So again, I'm looking at it as a single piece of information. And when I do that, I end up with x equals this one from here, and on the bottom, on the denominator, this bracket from here. Now that second question is definitely more complex than the first, and would be worth more marks if it was an exam question. But hopefully you can see from both of these questions that I've done that the method that you use is exactly the same as solving an equation. You are looking for what is surrounding the variable that you're after, or the subject that you're after, and removing those things by a process of doing the opposite of what you see. So if you see multiply, divide. If you see add, subtract, and so on.